Bruce, can you tell us about what happened with Macho Man Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth? She was so pretty, and he was a pro wrestling legend. But I've never had the courage to look up what went wrong. Can you tell us what you know?
Wait, are we sure we want to open this can of worms?
Dig up all the skeletons, Bruce.
All right, let's get to it. This one may take a bit, so sit back and get comfortable, but please chime in with your thoughts, everyone, as we go. During the spring and summer of 1992, Macho Man Randy Savage's primary rival was Ric Flair, with the WWF pushing a controversial storyline centered around Flair's alleged past relationship with Miss Elizabeth. Ric Flair, along with Bobby the Brain Heenan and Mr. Perfect, even presented supposed photo evidence in WWF magazine, claiming to show Flair and Elizabeth together. This angle was designed to drum up interest for their WrestleMania showdown, but it likely only added more strain to an already deteriorating real-life marriage between Savage and Elizabeth.
Wait, they were doing fake news before the internet? Groundbreakers?
1992 was supposed to be about the Yankees, not this soap opera.
Ric Flair always was the dirtiest player in the game. Proverbs 12:22 says the Lord detests lying lips.
Great passage. I love the book of Proverbs, and it's true. But look, it was a simple pro wrestling storyline. You're acting a little melodramatic here. Ric Flair was just doing his job.
This storyline deserves a steel chair right to the face.
I agree, because it's hard to believe anyone thought this was a good idea. The storyline painted Miss Elizabeth, long regarded as the first lady of professional wrestling, in a deeply unflattering light, essentially portraying her as unfaithful. Worse, the truth wasn't even revealed until after Macho Man Randy Savage defeated Ric Flair at WrestleMania. On the April 18th, 1992 episode of Superstars, Mean Gene finally cleared Elizabeth's name, showing that the photos Ric Flair had used were doctored. He presented the originals, which featured Randy Savage with Elizabeth, not Flair. The official World Wrestling Federation magazine confirmed the same around that time.
Took him long enough to clear her name?
The biggest heel turn was inside the World Wrestling Federation photo department. Ha!
Let me take that back. This storyline doesn't just deserve a steel chair right to the face, but it deserves about 50 of them and a tombstone piledriver off the Hell in the Cell cage and through a table. Talk about junk.
Still, the damage was done. Here was a real-life struggling couple forced to walk around with magazines showcasing fabricated images of Elizabeth with another man. It was a tasteless move, and while it may have served the storyline, it did so at the expense of two real people going through a rough chapter, something that many of us fans, even back then, found uncomfortable and unnecessary.
Some foolish people really believe that pro wrestling isn't reality TV, when it absolutely, undeniably is.
Why couldn't they just let them be happy?
Well, unfortunately, this is something Vince McMahon is known for. Vince McMahon's WWE had a history of intertwining real-life relationships with on-screen storylines, often blurring the lines between fiction and reality in ways that have raised eyebrows. A notable example is the 2015 storyline involving Lana and Rusev. Despite being a real-life married couple, McMahon was reportedly displeased when news of their engagement broke publicly, as it conflicted with their on-screen personas. According to reports, McMahon was so intent on maintaining the storyline's integrity that he considered separating them both on-screen and off. Believing that Rusev wasn't a suitable match for Lana and that a pairing with Dolph Ziggler would be more appropriate.
Wait, Vince McMahon, the diabolical Mr. McMahon from TV, was actually playing a real-life version of The Sims with real people? Yikes on bikes.
This pattern of blurring personal and professional boundaries isn't new. In the late 1980s, the storyline involving Randy Savage, Miss Elizabeth, and Hulk Hogan mirrored real-life tensions. Savage was reportedly protective and suspicious of Hogan's intentions toward Elizabeth, leading to genuine backstage friction. Wrestling veteran Dutch Mantel noted that Savage genuinely believed Hogan was trying to steal Elizabeth from him, highlighting how the storyline's implications affected their real-life relationships.
Hulk Hogan knew exactly what he was doing. That bleach blonde backstabber was playing political games while the legendary Macho Man Randy Savage was out here risking his neck every night. And Vince? Vince enabled it because drama sells. This wasn't wrestling. This was emotional grand theft.
Ethan's theatricality aside, this exemplifies wrestling's Faustian bargain. Savage's jealousy wasn't irrational. It was the inevitable result of an industry that monetizes personal relationships. Hulk Hogan's alleged behavior wasn't unique. It reflects a pattern seen in many people, because none of us are perfect. But like many in positions of influence, Hogan, and others in similar spots, often do whatever it takes to maintain their status and control. It's possible that seeing the elegant and beloved Miss Elizabeth paired with someone he viewed as beneath him in the company hierarchy was a hard pill for Hogan to swallow.
Let me guess. She's the victim again? This is so predictable. Of course, the woman who cheated on her husband did nothing wrong in your twisted mind.
We wasn't inside they walls. We have no idea what they was going through.
Real talk? Savage's instincts were S tier. Hulk Hogan? More like Saturday morning cartoon tier.
Sometimes I guess we could say that in the world of a pro wrestler's love life, the darkest betrayals wear the shiniest robes.
In real life, Savage and Elizabeth were about to separate, and did, with Elizabeth making her final World Wrestling Federation appearance on April 19th, 1992 at the UK Rampage pay-per-view. WrestleMania 8 marked Elizabeth's last major pay-per-view appearance in the United States for the World Wrestling Federation. While their relationship had been thriving on screen, Savage and Elizabeth were privately enduring a far more difficult time as a couple.
Damn right they were struggling. You think a man acts that paranoid without reason? Savage saw the writing on the wall. The Macho Man wasn't crazy. He was ahead of the curve.
A textbook case of performative happiness masking private despair. The greater the on-screen triumph, the deeper the off-screen fractures became.
This is exactly why you keep business and personal separate.
Although Savage and Flair continued feuding, the Elizabeth aspect was dropped from the storyline, and the former couple's divorce was finalized in September 1992. Savage briefly addressed the divorce in an issue of the World Wrestling Federation's official magazine, but it was otherwise not mentioned in kayfabe.
I'm on Macho Man's side with the divorce. The man loved his woman, and I see no fault in Macho Man here. The WWE should always honor its legends on the way out. Elizabeth was a certified legend, and that is a fact. Elizabeth deserved a retirement speech, not a disappearing act.
That's because the real breakup was too real for TV.
According to colleagues, Savage had melded his ring persona with his real-life personality, rendering him an intense, growling character for much of his waking hours. The tension was exacerbated by the long hours on the road and a partying lifestyle, as well as Elizabeth's personal struggles with an apparent eating disorder and her apparent covert desire to see people other than Macho Man.
The Macho Man was absolutely betrayed. He was betrayed by Miss Elizabeth. He was betrayed by Hulk Hogan. He was betrayed by Vincent Kennedy McMahon. He was betrayed by nearly everyone.
Listen here, brother. Let me hit you with the undisputed truth. Marriage counseling don't work when your therapist is Vince McMahon booking you in Trader Mania against your will. Savage didn't need a psych eval. He needed a contract clause banning all members of the Hogan family from his wife's zip code.
Did it ever occur to you that perhaps some of Miss Elizabeth's struggles reflect the collateral damage of living inside someone else's gimmick? Wouldn't you want to escape a shadow like that? Maybe Randy's macho madness was just too overwhelming for her, something that became all too clear with how their relationship ultimately ended.
Or maybe the sweet Miss Elizabeth was actually not so sweet after all. Maybe Miss Elizabeth thought the grass was always greener on the other side until she found out that it wasn't.
Or maybe it was, and you're too big of a Macho Man fan to admit that.
Wrong. I'm not about to sit here and listen to you paint someone who cheated on her husband as some victim.
There are always two sides to every single story.
Argue all you want, but just know everyone watching can see who's being the reasonable one and who's not. Cuori spezzati. Betrayal stains the soul to even those who hear about it.
I guess you could say Elizabeth was starving in every way.
Things came to a head in the summer of 1992 when Hogan and his wife extended an offer for Elizabeth to spend some time with them in Miami, only to learn she had bolted from home without telling Savage. Their divorce was finalized shortly afterward, 1 year after they proclaimed their undying love in the made-for-TV special, Their Match Made in Heaven.
Dios la perdone. They really were a beautiful couple. The match made in heaven was such a sweet moment. It's a shame they couldn't make it work. They both passed so young, and honestly, I can't help but wonder if they might have lived longer had they stayed together. Their personalities pushed Elizabeth away, sure, but with time they might have figured it out. Walking away is always the easier option, but it's not the one I'd ever recommend.
Miss Elizabeth had a place of honor beside her husband, and stepping away while he was out working, hoping to find something better, just wasn't fitting for the First Lady of Wrestling. She didn't need to do it that way. Love, like the kind she once shared with Randy, is worth tending to, not tossing aside. When you're blessed with something sacred, you don't go chasing what's already beneath you.
Macho Man Randy Savage is, without question, the greatest wrestler to ever live, bar none. My dad and I used to watch every one of his matches together, and those memories are stitched into the fabric of my soul. But if I'm being honest, and I always am, I don't know if I could have lived with someone that intense, especially at Elizabeth's age back then. That kind of passion, that fire, it can be overwhelming in a home. It doesn't make me love Randy any less. He was larger than life, but not everyone is built to walk beside that kind of storm. It doesn't make them evil. On the contrary, those who can remain by intensity's side are the true chosen ones in this world.
Oh, give me a break with the fairy tale nonsense. Just because they were wrestling royalty doesn't mean they were exempt from reality. Newsflash: fame doesn't nullify the laws of human nature. Relationships, real ones, require consistency, trust, and shared values, not just matching outfits and pyrotechnics. You put two people under the spotlight, surround them with chaos, egos, and travel schedules, and then act shocked when it all falls apart? Please, stop. Just stop. That wasn't a normal marriage. It was a pressure cooker with a ring apron. The truth is, no amount of glory in the ring can cover up missing a stable home life, and anybody pretending otherwise is just romanticizing celebrity dysfunction.
Bret the Hitman Hart was quoted as saying, "Away from the spotlight, the real Liz was very much like the character she played. She was shy and quiet, and her elegant grace was easy on the eyes. She and Randy were great together and had already been married for years before their live on pay-per-view wedding at SummerSlam 91.
Miss Elizabeth's quiet nature and grace weren't just character traits, they were extensions of who she genuinely was. But when you place a gentle soul like that into the machinery of professional wrestling, where every relationship becomes a spectacle and every private moment risks being monetized, it's only a matter of time before something breaks. Her televised wedding to Randy wasn't the beginning of a union. It was a scripted reenactment of something already sacred, already real, and in many ways already strained. We should mourn not only the fall of a beautiful relationship, but also the culture that put it on display and called it entertainment.
Their love story needed a happy ending, not a dusty finish.
George the Animal Steel was quoted as saying, "While Randy was always very professional, having Elizabeth there made things tough for him. I think it would have been tough for anyone. She was a beautiful young lady. They were married, and it was never easy having your wife with you on the road. Most of the guys I knew who tried it wound up divorced, and they were no exception. Professional wrestling was not exactly the set of the Waltons."
You know, he's not wrong. Being on the road in this business, with the constant travel and pressure, it changes things. I don't think it's just the fame, it's the grind. Randy was great, but even the strongest relationships can crack under that weight. It's easy to forget that behind the personas, these were real people living real lives, not just character in a performance ring.
The Ultimate Warrior was quoted as saying, "The backstage environment is like a zoo. Hallways are set up as dressing rooms. You can see guys half undressed, totally undressed, going to the shower in a towel, or still in their underwear or their trunks. Elizabeth was one of the only women at the time that was in the backstage area. And I gotta tell you, man, I've never met a group of males with a greater tendency toward adultery, promiscuity, and even sexual perversion. Randy was just protective of the wife that he loved."
Finally, someone said it. Warrior just blew the lid off this cesspool. Randy wasn't paranoid. On the contrary, he was the only sane man in a locker room full of degenerates. I'm so sick and tired of these foolish documentaries that paint Macho Man as some lunatic, when in reality he would have been a lunatic had he not been paranoid around those degenerates in the WWF locker room.
The tragedy of protection is that it often becomes its own prison. Randy's intensity, born from love, obsession, and the grotesque realities of the wrestling world, didn't just shield Elizabeth, it suffocated her. Was her rebellion pure temptation, like Eve biting the apple? Or was it the inevitable result of being told too often, too loudly, that the toxic garden inside the World Wrestling Federation locker room was poison, so she begun to crave the poison? The truth, as always, lives in the tension between the two. And no cage, no matter how gilded, stays forever comfortable to everyone. Not saying this is necessarily the complete case here, but some would rather jump into the ocean to escape the safety of the rails on the deck of a ship because they mistake rails for a cage.
Look, Warrior's got a point, but let's be real. Wrestling back then wasn't a locker room, it was a jungle. A whole lot of people were operating under the mindset that anything goes. But Randy, he wasn't just being protective, he was guarding something sacred, his wife, their love. In that world, where everything is about manipulation and showmanship, what Randy had was real. And that's the problem. People get so used to playing games, they forget what real loyalty looks like. Protecting Elizabeth wasn't about control, it was about honor. Something you don't often find in places like that.
Randy's brother, the genius Lanny Poffo, was quoted as saying, "There were people putting Halcyon in people's drinks. There were people using people's suitcases as toilets. It was like National Lampoon's Animal House. My brother was just a no-nonsense guy in a world full of nonsense."
Sometimes the sane can go insane when they've been trapped for too long inside of madhouses.
Macho Man Randy Savage was quoted as saying, "Elizabeth and I were having problems. It happens that at the time, Elizabeth and Hulk Hogan's wife Linda were very, very, very best friends. And they were running around together. I didn't think it was healthy for our relationship. I would call home, and Elizabeth wouldn't be there."
Oh, now it all makes sense. Linda Hogan wasn't just a friend. Linda Hogan was the godfather of this divorce. While Hulk was backstage politicking, Linda was playing matchbreaker with Elizabeth. The Hogan crime family struck again.
Savage's admission reveals the social engineering at play. Linda Hogan didn't just befriend Elizabeth, she assimilated her. The real Megapowers explosion happened off-screen, in the domestic sphere.
A true woman fortifies marriages. She doesn't sabotage them. That's disgusting and so unbecoming of an adult. What is wrong with her?
Here's an undisputed fact. Even my brutal ex-wife's friends were less toxic.
One might say that if your wife's new friend smells like trouble, she probably is.
Linda Hogan's women's revolution was breaking up marriages.
Miss Elizabeth was quoted as saying, "I wasn't really finished growing up. I was reacting a little and acting out, maybe against Randy, and not having a clear focus and idea of what I wanted as well."
This is the tragedy. Elizabeth wasn't acting out, she was drowning. The wrestling business stole her adulthood, then shamed her for not knowing how to swim.
The true lesson learned from what she said is for all the aspiring young ladies aspiring to chase a wrestling dream. Rather than chasing a family, just remember that a rose rarely blooms inside a wrestling locker room.
The Ultimate Warrior was quoted as saying, "Randy was very protective of her and did not allow a line leading to over-friendly contact with other talent. And believe me, the lines Randy drew never had slack in them. He knew full well too many talents in the business had no scruples, so he never subjected his beloved to the chance. Let there be no mistake. Wound up as the macho element of Randy's life was, when it came to his marriage, he was disciplined and controlled, had class and respected it traditionally.
The strongest walls should always be built around the absolute most precious things in order to soundly protect them."
Hulk Hogan was quoted as saying, "I was getting ready to shoot a movie called Mr. Nanny. I said to Liz, Linda and the kids are all going down to Miami, and we got a couple of different rooms all put together for the kids. I thought maybe Liz could come down to help Linda."
Oh, now it comes out. The Mr. Nanny alibi. Let me guess. The Incredible Hulk Hogan's extra hotel room probably just happened to involve a run-in from someone not named Randy Savage as well. Right, brother? This wasn't a friendly invite. It was a coup. The Hulkster was coaching a long game of home wrecker with his wife taking snaps at the quarterback position.
The Macho Man Randy Savage was quoted as saying, "I was on the road. I would have phone conversations with Hogan, and he would give me swerves and curves, but never say that Liz was there. She was either out with his wife Linda or hiding out at their house."
Swerves and curves? That's what you call lying to a man's face? Hogan wasn't just politicking. The Incredible Hulk Hogan was gaslighting Randy Savage while hiding his wife like stolen merchandise. This is absolute criminal behavior. There should be laws criminalizing fake friends like Hogan.
The Ultimate Warrior, who was friends with Macho Man, was quoted as saying, "Hogan and his wife and Vince McMahon planted ideas in her head that she was missing out on some magnificent, untamed life adventure."
Fascinating. This mirrors child star psychological profiles. What in the world is it with the wrestling business?
This feud needed a no-holds-barred liars exposed match.
You won't believe what Hulk Hogan said next. Hulk Hogan was quoted as saying that, "Liz came down to Miami, and the next thing I know, no disrespect intended, brother, but the big rib was all the room service guys would say, 'We don't know what room to take Liz's room service to because she changes rooms so much.'"
Is Hulk Hogan implying that the real hardcore champion was Miss Elizabeth?
When the room service guys know your whereabouts better than your husband? You've jumped the moral guardrail, sister.
Let's be clear. A married woman doesn't just visit Miami and play musical hotel rooms. This wasn't some innocent vacation.
Macho Man Randy Savage was quoted as saying, "When I would call home, there was no answer. 4 days went by. Liz called me and told me to get a lawyer because she wanted a divorce. In desperation, I flew to Miami."
4 days of radio silence, then get a lawyer? That's not a wife. That's a definable coward. If Elizabeth had grievances, she should have faced Randy like a woman, not fled to Miami like
This
some...
was the most dramatic breakup since the Mega Powers' Mean Gene.
As someone who grew up working on cars, I'll say this. When your bolts keep shaking loose, maybe you're revving too hard in life.
There are several classy ways to exit. This was not one of those ways.
Hulk Hogan was quoted as saying, "I was in the shower because I was going to work at from 6 at night till 6 in the morning filming, and he was in the room standing over Linda going, 'Ooh yeah, where's Liz?' I come out of the shower and go," puts his hands up, "Brother, she's around back. I can show you the room she's in." 20 minutes before then, she had been sitting out at the pool with her boyfriend, and I was hot about it, man, because I didn't know what to do. I saw them leave the pool to go back to her room, and I swear to you, as soon as I got to my room, that's when Macho showed up.
Note the theatricality. Hogan frames himself as the hapless victim while describing Elizabeth's flagrant adultery. This isn't testimony, it's performance art designed to retroactively justify the unjustifiable.
Matt Bourne, a.k.a. Doink the Clown, was quoted as saying, "Elizabeth was seeing this small-time producer who happened to be a friend of Hogan's."
Oh, now the truth comes out. Hogan's friend just happened to be there? Brother, please. This was a setup. And anyone who denies this, you are gullible.
You gotta be kidding me. This can't be true. I had no idea that she was sleeping with one of Hogan's friends. This is insane.
A small-time producer introduced by Hogan? This wasn't coincidence. It was social engineering. Isolate, then destabilize.
The real clown wasn't Doink, it was Hogan's producer pal.
We don't know what she was going through, but we know who was handing out the maps.
Hulk Hogan was quoted as saying, "So I took Randy and got the manager of the hotel and ran them around the back. I didn't know if the boyfriend was still in there or if he split. All I know is when the manager unlocked the door, Macho pushed it open and Macho Man said, 'What's up, Liz?' The door closed and I ran, brother. I ran back to my hotel room. About 20 minutes later, there must have been 40 police cars there."
Hogan ran? Of course he did. The Hulkster was a backstage politician and was not a stand-up guy during this era. If Randy had caught that weasel in the act, it would have been a bad day for Hulk Hogan.
Hogan's retelling is a masterclass in passive voice. Notice how he ran, while Elizabeth bore the brunt of the confrontation.
Matt Bourne was quoted as saying, Elizabeth was hiding in the back room when Savage went to see Hogan, and he found out about it. Hogan showed his true colors. That's why he got the black eye that he had at WrestleMania 9. Randy Savage gave it to him. I'd bet my left nut and my son's life on it. Hogan was supposed to be Savage's friend, and he threw him under a bus.
That black eye was Randy Savage's receipt for the mega betrayal. The Macho Man didn't just wrestle. He lived up to his name as the Macho Man. It didn't matter if you were Hawk from the Legion of Doom or Hulk Hogan himself, Macho Man would always attempt to settle scores the old-fashioned way.
The real WrestleMania moment that year was actually Hogan's Shiner. Everyone was speculating about it, and ironically enough, my dad and I suspected Macho Man did it because he was on the announce team that night. And who else on that roster would have punched him?
Macho Man Randy Savage was quoted as saying, the honesty and friendship weren't there, and possibly it never was. I was fooled.
Randy said it himself. The Macho Man was fooled. The Macho Man wasn't paranoid in the past because the future proved him right. His woman was not trustworthy deep down inside, and she proved that. And his friend Hulk Hogan wasn't either, which he already knew at his core. He read these people like a book. Always trust your gut.
Savage's admission reveals the true cost of wrestling's performative brotherhood. Real trust was always the rarest commodity.
The Ultimate Warrior was quoted as saying, I spent a lot of time with Randy during the time of their separation and ultimately their divorce. Most of it in the hallways and locker rooms of coliseums. We were on the road working our program together. Randy is meticulously tough, but it really tested his spirit.
My daddy always said that a person's strength isn't in never falling. It's in standing up again, especially when no one's watching.
Why does it always seem like the strongest people are the ones who suffer the most quietly?
Coraggio. True courage is enduring when the world expects you to explode.
Miss Elizabeth was quoted as saying, when Randy and I divorced, there was a period of 3 or 4 years where I did maintain a normal life in Miami. I had a real job, but it was difficult.
She had to get a real job after living the high life with Randy Savage? Sounds like karma came collecting.
First Lady of Wrestling became just another 9-to-5er. Reality bites.
To trade the spotlight for solitude is its own kind of martyrdom. She wanted to get away. She just wanted normal again.
She wanted normal? She worked for the World Wrestling Federation. Who works for the World Wrestling Federation and then says, oh yes, I want normal? And what part of normal includes sleeping with Hulk Hogan's friends as a married woman? Is that normal to her?
Ethan, normal is code for not being a prop in someone else's drama. Elizabeth wasn't running from something. She was running to herself.
Another undisputed fact, divorce settlements hit harder than a Hogan leg drop.
Hulk Hogan was quoted as saying, Savage said that I was the one who started it, that I was the one who got him divorced. He blamed it all on me. I was just trying to be cool. I was just inviting her down to hang out with Linda and the kids. I didn't know she was going to run wild on him. After that, bro, he snapped. You know, there was no fixing it.
Look, man, Hogan messed up. Bad. But he owned his sinful ways later. That's more than most guys in this business ever do.
Fun fact, Hogan's 2010s interviews about faith got less press than his scandals. Funny how that works.
This betrayal didn't just end a friendship. It rewired Randy Savage's ability to trust. That's the real tragedy.
I'd say a person who trusts no one is just a person who's been lied to way too often.
Macho Man Randy Savage was quoted as saying, Hogan disrespected me and my family, but through the media, you know? Instead of, let's say, you have a problem with me, you call me to the side man to man, we talk about it, we agree to disagree, we have a fight, we have an adult beverage, whatever. Man to man. That's not the way he does it. 'Cause he's a wuss. You understand what I'm saying? He goes on the airwaves and he disrespects me. He gives me a shout over the radio. He gives me a shout over the TV. He gives me a shout over the internet here and there. But nothing face to face. You got it? If Hogan didn't like what I said over the airwaves and wanted to fight in front of the WWF, in any arena nearby or in a garage of his choice, that would be cool for the Macho Man Randy Savage. Liz thought she had a best friend with Hulk Hogan's wife. Can you believe the fact that they don't even talk now? So what kind of friends do you think they were? It's almost like they got the job done. Broke us up, did whatever they had to do. They're not even friends now.
Randy was right to call Hogan out. Sometimes taking someone to the old-fashioned school of hard knocks is the only language some of these snakes understand.
Dios nos libre. Anger solves nothing. Only prayer heals these wounds.
Listen, buckos, if you ain't willing to say it face to face, it ain't worth saying.
Sensational Sherry Martel was quoted as saying, "When I met up with Liz again later in WCW, she was a bit different. She wasn't the same Liz. She was single. She and Randy had got the divorce."
Sensational Sherry didn't exactly strike me as the purveyor of traditional values. She was a traveling female wrestler for crap's sakes.
Macho Man's brother, Leaping Lanny Poffo, a.k.a. The Genius, was quoted as saying, "Later on in WCW, Randy brought her in to use as an angle and to get closure to everything. Randy's all business, and he doesn't let his personal life get in the way of his business life." He knew that many fans were really interested in seeing Elizabeth again, and he was right. They were. I was in WCW famously on the payroll but not working, so I decided to take my suitcase there and see if they could use me at all. And that's where I saw the lovely Miss Elizabeth in the dressing room. She said hello to me, and we talked for about 5 minutes, and that was the last time I saw her.
Randy brought her back for the fans. Say what you want about the Macho Man, but he understood what she meant to people.
Creative mastermind Eric Bischoff did what with her? Eric Bischoff just slapped a New World Order shirt on Miss Elizabeth in World Championship Wrestling. Real creative, Eric. Another signing, another New World Order shirt rack. This is what he did with everyone. He wasted Ted Turner's money like it was going out of style. Steal talent away from the World Wrestling Federation and put a New World Order shirt on them. So creative. What a fake genius. Talk about a downgrade. From the First Lady of Professional Wrestling wearing shiny, stunning dresses to wearing cheap New World Order t-shirts. Just brilliant. A man of this brilliance clearly should host a podcast condemning everything in modern pro wrestling as being short-sighted, because the New World Order shirt department in World Championship Wrestling was so much more creative than everything today, according to Eric.
Miss Elizabeth was quoted as saying, "For as much as we complain, all of us, about the traveling, the schedules, and the planes and all of that, there is something sort of special about the wrestling business that is hard to let go. I suppose it's in my blood." I didn't realize it until actually I got a call and somebody said, "What do you think about coming back to work?" I was so excited. I never thought I would come back to it. Because of my personal relationship with Randy, I didn't want to be involved if it would make him uncomfortable. Now we have a good relationship, and he has a very sweet girlfriend, and we all get on very well. When I first started in the business, I was treated like royalty in the World Wrestling Federation, standing in the background and listening and not pushing myself into the forefront of whatever was happening. I gained a lot of knowledge. That was probably what connected me to Lex Luger, because we both go along and do what we are supposed to do. That's what has made us connect and bond and find mutual respect for each other.
Some bonds are forged in necessity, but sometimes those bonds are merely a safety net to break your fall from grace.
Why does it always seem like the gentlest souls leave the loudest silence?
Her words reveal wrestling's cruel paradox. It breaks you, but you miss the breaking, like a soldier longing for war.
Macho Man Randy Savage was quoted as saying, "I've changed a lot in my lifetime. I was worried about my wife then. It's very hard to let go, but you've got to."
This is the tragedy and triumph of Savage's story. The same intensity that made him legendary in the ring became his prison outside it. His late career softening wasn't weakness. It was wisdom earned through fire.
Ain't no shame in his hard-to-let-go confession. That's one of the realest things any wrestler ever said.
Some kids don't get it, and may never get it, because this era is so desensitized from reality. Randy Savage admitting weakness took more guts than any top rope elbow drop.
Dios lo bendiga. Brokenness is often where God enters, so open your heart.
And there you have it. The complete, unvarnished story of Macho Man Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth's divorce. A can of worms indeed. A love story that began like a fairy tale, played out under wrestling's brightest lights, and ended with hard truths and quiet redemption? Through all the betrayal, heartbreak, and backstage politics, two things remain undeniable. Randy Savage was one of the greatest to ever step in the ring, and Elizabeth's grace under pressure made her the first lady of wrestling in more than just name. Their story wasn't perfect. No real love story ever is. But perhaps what matters most isn't how it ended, but what they gave us along the way. Those magical moments at WrestleMania, the chemistry that captivated millions, and the undeniable truth that when Randy and Elizabeth stood together, wrestling felt larger than life. This is Bruce signing off. Thank you for joining us on this journey through wrestling's most complicated love story. Until next time, peace.